Good morning, everybody. Another Thursday morning. I'm Evelyn Thoren. I'm your host for the Dawn Patrol, which is the next hour, roughly, till 7. And from 7 to 8 is City Life. We're expecting John Moses in from Chelmsford. He's on the Chelmsford School Committee, and he also has started a nonprofit to help the Afghan refugees because he is a retired veteran in the Army because he did serve over there. So we'll talk to him about a lot of things, provided that he comes, and if not, we always have plenty to talk about.
He'll be here.
Yeah, we've reminded him because he has something to PR. And my co-host, Sam Chase, Bob Hoey. We missed you last week, Bob, but here you are.
Jay Lang you had, huh?
Yeah,
Yes.
I thought you did this once before when he came, too.
I seen him in the parking lot, though, when he was leaving, so.
Oh,
I was
okay.
outside.
And we have John McDonough behind the camera, but since he has control of the camera, sometimes he's on the camera. So a little chilly this morning driving in. My car was 10 degrees, and in Chelmsford, I think it was 11 or 12 when I looked at it, when I got up about 4:45 or so. So
12 at my house at 4:15, 12. So you're a little,
we're cooler than you are.
you're a degree or two cooler than.
We always are.
Yeah, than we are. So.
I think it might have something to do just sheer location.
Right.
And we're like in the woods, and there's water behind us, so there's, we can explain all of that stuff as far as location goes. I did talk to my sister in Florida, and it's 43. She's in Southwest Florida on the Gulf of America. I think that's kind of very interesting to be able to just, with the swipe of a pen, rename a whole area. But it's at the discretion of everybody else if they want to talk about it.
We'll see how, what I want to do, and I haven't done it yet because I haven't had time, but maybe today, the change of the Mount McKinley, which was always Mount McKinley, and then apparently during the Obama administration, they changed it to Denali.
Yes.
I guess I didn't even know that, or if I did, I'd forgotten it, right?
Well, it wasn't important because we don't live there.
Right, but I want to know why it was changed from McKinley to Denali. So if anybody in the audience has that answer, let Mr. McDonough know. I haven't looked it up yet, but I will at some point.
Oh, we can look it up.
Yeah, why would you do? I mean, McKinley was not a bad president, so why would you change it?
Yeah, I don't think he was a racist, a segregationist. Let's see, what else can we name him?
McKinley is considered. Could be, I don't know, but it could be the locals wanted,
Well, that's the
wanted
other.
the name change.
Well, the Denali, if I think that I read what it meant, which I don't recall currently, in whatever the natives'
Right.
language was.
Could be a local
and it was a local thing, or maybe that's what they called it way back before McKinley.
Maybe President Obama had no Denali truck.
Could be.
Oh, I
You
don't think
never know.
it wasn't that. But you can certainly ask,
Yeah.
we'll put it up.
Doesn't take questions. I can't call him up.
I'll find out
I
what
can't
that
call
was.
Barack Obama up.
But
No, I didn't ask you to ask.
McKinley is considered by historians to be one of our better presidents. So
Some people said that he's similar to what we're currently have in office. But when I was talking about the weather, I found an article on Google, and it says 5 Massachusetts towns and cities that typically get the most snow. And part of the reason I put it in there was one of the towns, well, actually the city, that it was Lowell.
really,
Yep. The 5th most in Massachusetts that gets the most snow.
Oh,
It
that's
averages
interesting.
61.6 inches of snow on an annual basis.
We might not hit that this year
I
either.
would have thought Springfield or Pittsfield, but
Past
no,
2 or 3, Sam, right?
Well, no,
They've
the-
been easy.
Yeah.
Snowstorms
Who's
have
the
been
4th
easy
one?
around here.
Yes.
Pittsfield is the 4th, Worcester is the 3rd.
Yeah. Okay. Just as high.
Haverhill Lawrence, because that's in the same band as
Yeah.
Lowell, is second,
What's first?
and Fitchburg.
Okay, I lived in Fitchburg for 2 years. I can attest to that. Yes,
Yeah.
I would agree with that one. Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
annual snowfall, anywhere in Massachusetts, with this one being 82.2 inches annually, because it's north and central.
Yeah, Fitchburg is,
And Worcester does get
and
an awful
Fitchburg
lot of
is high,
snow.
too. The elevation is higher, so.
So, we'll see how it goes.
I've been just fighting, making sure my cellar stays warm enough, That's it. The snow, I watch my son, it's about 200 feet of sidewalk where I live. I watched my son with one shovel pushed right down the whole thing. It was so light. There was no water in the snow at all.
Now,
Well, there's
does-
water in it, it
froze.
just wasn't heavy.
Does
Yeah, but
the
it was
city-
the lightest
does-
snow I ever felt.
Does Lowell plow sidewalks?
Some,
Some?
they
Okay.
have to, yeah. With a bobcat, some they do.
Yeah, you're right, downtown.
Okay.
So I thought that was interesting as far as the snowfall goes. We didn't have any issues. We got snow at the lake, maybe not even as much as we got here. I did drive down to see my mother the other day, and they seemed to have as much snow as we did in Braintree. So it was, I
I'd say we got about 5 inches where we are.
That's a good guess.
think we
Yeah.
had more. I didn't measure it, but I ought to put something out there to measure. It looked to me like we had 6 inches or a little bit more where we are.
Right. Yeah,
because
my
it
daughter
can
gets,
vary.
Allison gets, my daughter Allison, who lives on the Chelmsford line, and she's elevated. They usually get more snow than we do in this, and we're in the center of town. And she usually gets more snow, so.
So anyway, so that's all the weather, and we know that the south coast along the Gulf of America the Gulf of America got its first snowfall.
Yeah.
May have been the Gulf of Mexico, but I mean, it's going to be interesting trying to remember to call it that.
It's going to take the cartographers a long time to
Change
catch up with
everything.
that.
Yeah.
Gulf of America, Sam, I missed last week. I wasn't here. I know you had one of my favorite people on the show, Jay Lang.
Yes, and he was very, very informative, too.
But
He
it's
always
been
is.
so cold. When I wasn't working, I was watching Fox News, and I've had enough. I've had enough.
Oh, yeah, no,
already.
I can't
I
watch
want
it
to
anymore.
just talk local. I'm saying to myself, oh boy, Evelyn must be loaded with stuff by now.
Well, I'm loaded with
just-
stuff based upon national.
And that's what I
Because
want to hear.
that's
from you.
okay.
I
Well,
wanna
that's what
hear
I've been.
that.
I actually have been listening to stuff, and I was thoroughly amused the night of the inauguration when he's signing the executive orders and having a press conference at the same time.
He's given more press conferences in 3 days than Biden did in a year.
Oh yeah, but that's the personality. Plus
Well,
the fact.
this question should be asked to candidates when they're running for office. How often will you have a press conference?
I think you're right, I agree with you.
Yes,
The
but
media
based-
is so afraid of getting kicked out, like, from my end, okay? We don't get invited to anything because administration doesn't like to us. That's okay. I don't mind. It's a lot less for me to do. I have no obligations. Channel 4, 5, 7, 11, it's their job. If they don't cover the White House, they might lose a few advertisers. So they're afraid that they won't let us know anything. If we're not nice to them, we won't let them know. So I think when somebody's running for office, they should be asked, how often will you have a press conference, a news conference? How often will you have a news conference? And let them answer the question. Say, okay, if you don't do it that often, will you resign? You got to put a thing on it. You said, okay, you said if you didn't do it, you'd resign.
Yeah, but that's like saying to somebody, well, you told us that this is what you ran on, but you haven't done anything. Promises made, promises unkept.
But, Evelyn, but there's no place to ask them a question.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of places you can ask the question prior to. However, one of the reasons.
Really, how easy is it to get a guest to come in here from the Chelmsford Selectmen? How easy is it to get them to come in?
Well, it depends on the personalities. It's not easy, but it's not because.
Part of it's timing.
That's why I say,
Yeah, that's where we're at.
They're just as busy as you are, see.
It's
Right.
easy. It's easier for me to get somebody on my show because it's in the afternoon. Part of the problem here is it's early in the morning, so it's tougher for
That's
people
why
to
we
make
don't have
that
Simon
commitment.
Cataldo.
so-
He's got 3 small kids
Right.
to try to get to school.
Oh,
So
I
I
bet you
understand.
If the governor was going to take him to breakfast, what do you think he'd do about his kids? He wouldn't say,
Well,
I'm
usually
sorry, Madam
breakfast isn't
Governor.
at 6 a.m. But what
I
I
have to
wanted
take
to
care of
say
my
with
kids.
regard to you, or the conversation about the press conferences, is that the more you have exposure to the public, and you make comments and you give opinions and whether or not it's going to be actual action that you're going to take, and even if you're thinking out loud, the more criticism you're going to receive. So if you say nothing, everybody's trying to second guess what you're going to do, so there's not as much
But they'll criticize you.
discussion.
They'll criticize you for saying nothing.
And that's
True,
why I
but-
wanted to hear from you about Elon Musk, because I think he's bringing a lot of heat on Trump already.
That's
little bit.
Yeah, but he's only bringing heat on Trump because the press has very little to do.
So
and-
let me ask you something about Musk. Okay, so prior to him getting affiliated with Trump, what was his party affiliation? Do you know?
No clue.
Was he a Republican or a Democrat?
I thought that he gave to the Democratic Party.
Yes, he was a supporter of the Democrats. Okay. So I would also remind you that when President Trump and the First Lady were married 20 years ago, who attended the wedding? Do you know?
a lot of people who didn't go to the inauguration. I saw that
Two
ad.
people who attended Trump's wedding were Hillary and Bill Clinton. Okay, so, and I say these things, okay, because people need to understand, all right? And I've said it before, I'll say it again. Maybe this is the last time I'll say it. It's all about being a member of the club, okay? And Trump used to be a member of the club or somebody who was just outside of being a member in the club before he got involved politically, because everybody wanted his money and everybody wanted to be seen with him, okay? But once he decided to make the jump into politics, now he's a disruptor, okay? And he's not a member of the club, all right? So, you know, make sure you understand the history, okay? Make sure you know that for many, many years, Bill and Hillary Clinton hobnobbed with Donald Trump, okay? I think that's important for people to know, okay? So,
I asked the computer, and
Yep.
the computer says Musk has often been described as a libertarian, but described himself as a politically moderate until 22. When COVID pandemic, his views have been described as becoming a right-wing conservative over time, sometimes being described as far right.
And I think that the descriptions or however the definitions are is only in the eyes of whoever it is that's trying to analyze him.
Right.
Because you have to have some perspective on who you are and how you can measure the persons that you're trying to evaluate, so you come up with some kind of an opinion with regard to that. But that all being stated, Musk is, as the saying goes, he's worth an awful lot of money.
here it is, right there.
432 billion.
Don't forget the .6. I wouldn't mind having .6 billion, would you, John?
I'll take it.
Yeah, okay.
And I'm going to ask how long is a billion seconds, just to let you know how
That's a
long.
long time.
A million seconds is, I think it's 11 years. No, 11 days.
But you know, Evelyn,
Yeah.
what I've picked up on, what I think Trump has done really well, Democrats are starting to vote on Republican issues. Look at what just happened. It was like 49 Democrats voted for that girl that got killed there.
Yeah, but that's a logical thing.
Yeah,
Million-
I don't
million
know. I
seconds-
think
a
it's-
million
I think
seconds
it's
is
gonna
12
help.
days.
I think it's going to help.
Million
Stretching
seconds
it-
is 12 days, okay.
12 days, okay.
I was a little bit surprised that Marco Rubio was, near unanimously confirmed.
He was one of the group, so
Well,
they knew
that-
him very well.
What did I just say?
I know that.
Yeah.
Okay,
A billion seconds.
member of the club,
A
okay?
billion seconds is 31 years.
Yeah.
That will do a trillion.
How much? A billion seconds is approximately 31.7 years.
Wow.
That's a long time. So what you're
Compare to a million.
what you're
That will
really
do a
saying is
trillion.
what you're really saying is that the concept, to most people, the concept of $1 billion is beyond our comprehension.
Look at a trillion,
Okay.
Sam.
A trillion is 31,000
Yeah,
years.
well, we'll never see that, right?
So when they talk about trillions, that's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's-
we know.
it's-
And there's all kinds of other ways that they do an analysis.
The average brain is not equipped to deal with that. Okay, we can't I can't conceive of $1 trillion. I can't. Okay, I just can't.
But
Well,
when
all right.
I convert it to seconds, it helps you understand how much bigger it is
Yes,
than you
exactly,
can imagine.
exactly.
But one of the things that's interesting when you say that the human brain can't have that concept, I think that we can to a certain extent, but when you said that, there was something else which is very much off topic. When I study different things religiously, okay, and, I believe in God, and what mankind tries to do relative to God is explain God, since we are finite and He's infinite, and what you just said, that the human brain, it's hard to wrap your head around what these numbers are. Well, it's exactly the same thing as far as trying to explain God away. How do you do that?
Well,
By trying to make something that's infinite finite.
in historical terms, we explain God in human terms, in terms that we can understand. All right, that's what we do.
No, I understand that part,
Yeah.
but sometimes people try to explain it away, and there really is very little explanation with regard to the concept, because it's just, it's beyond comprehension in many ways.
I don't think we're going to see this preacher in the public eye much more.
Oh, I don't know.
You don't know. I mean, she's become the new hero of the left.
Well, I would
Heroine.
have
I don't know if
asked
she's a
her
hero or a heroine.
if she takes questions, because a lot of preachers don't take questions.
She was on CNN.
Do you observe the Ten Commandments? I would ask her that.
I'm sure she does.
So what happens when somebody in your congregation is a murderer, an adulteress, and go down the whole 10, steals? What happens to that guy? You just forgive and forget? When he steals the microphone off the podium, you just turn the other cheek? Take something from the church and see what happens. Go up to this gal and, you know what, take this black thing off her. That would give you nice and warm, a little scarf. Take her microphone, and I don't know what else you can take off. Take her BMW and see how she likes it. Walk home, honey. Bye-bye.
Well,
Love thy neighbor.
Yeah, but with some of the comments that she made, to try to lecture the President of the United States and tell them different things, there's different ways you could have addressed that versus the way that she did.
Yeah, she did.
And she could have easily have made a comment about, we have in our audience this morning, our new President of the United States. He has some actions that I don't agree with.
Oh, no, you don't say that from the pulpit.
You could. Well, she shouldn't have said what she said from
I
the
agree.
pulpit.
I agree with you, but I make a distinction. First of all, number one, she's entitled to her opinion. That's the first thing. Okay. Number two, as a Christian minister, all right, what she said was not out of line. Show mercy, be kind. That was not out of line. Where I think she crossed the line was directing her comments specifically at the president.
Right, but
I don't think that was appropriate for any preacher to do from the pulpit.
Right.
What she said was okay, but to look the guy in the eye and say, Mr. President, you need to do this, this, and this, that was not, that's where
Right,
she
but where
crossed
I
the
was
line.
going with this, Sam, was the following. It seems as though we have a difference of opinion. I look at it from this point, and I would like to sit down and discuss with you the difference of opinions that we have, and invite conversation and discussion. Because to lecture at somebody, especially publicly, usually doesn't get you very far with the other person.
No, and the other problem I have is, again, the content of what she expressed, I don't have a problem with, because you expect that from a Christian, Christ-like minister, okay? However, if you look at her background, she is a Trump hater, okay, and she has that history. So that's the other thing that brings you into the fold.
Why would you invite somebody who hates your guts to speak?
Well, he didn't invite her. I mean, that's her church, okay?
Oh, it's her church.
Yeah.
Okay.
She is the Episcopal bishop of the Diocese of Washington. So her home base is the National Cathedral. That's where she is. The National Cathedral is an Episcopal church.
Okay. Well, you got two here, Sam.
Yeah.
Please.
How come Vanna Howard never comes in to let us know what she's up to? I don't know. Do you ask her?
That's easy.
When I have asked her, it's always voicemail, and I
Okay.
don't hear back.
So the answer is
I
that,
have not called her in years.
okay, but
When she was first installed, I
Yeah.
called her a few times, left voicemail.
I actually had her on my show a few years ago.
What's she doing with? What's she
Yeah.
doing down there? Nothing. What's she doing?
Well, she's not Chelmsford's rep anymore, but when she took over from Dave Nangle, okay, she was still representing part of Chelmsford, so I did have her on the show. We had a nice interview, but that was several years ago.
Jay from Drake, and he says, "Good morning. The mainstream media are up to their old tricks with lies and propaganda against a man who the American people wanted. Turn off the news."
Yeah, I think it's time to turn off the news for a little while.
Well,
I'm with you, Bob, okay?
Yeah,
Well,
it's
that's one
time
of
to
the-
just think local.
That's one of the things about all of the executive orders, is that he told everybody what he was going to do. This was not a surprise. And some of the stuff, to just blanket it, since I haven't read it, I can't comment on anything that goes into the details. But there's a lot of other pieces, I'm sure, with these executive orders that we just haven't seen. But he did exactly what he said he was going to do.
Well, that's,
And
and
what the American people, when he did all the rallies, he asked them.
that's one of the problems with Trump. That's one of the problems that some people have with Trump, because he does do what he says he's going to do. I remember when he first took office, and one of the very controversial things he did was he moved the American embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Now, the history is that every president, going back 5 presidents from Eisenhower on, every single one of them said that when they got into office, they would move the embassy. Every one, Republicans and Democrats. It was never done. Trump came in and said, you know what? We've been saying we're going to move that embassy for 50 years, and so I'm going to move it. And everybody went crazy, all right? But that was a campaign promise that all the preceding presidents had made, and they never followed through. And so I think one thing that has people nervous about Trump is if Trump stands up and says, I'm going to do such and such, everyone realizes, well, yeah, he's either going to do it or he's going to die in the attempt. So it's not just with Trump. It appears to be just not political rhetoric. If he says
Bobby,
he's
I got
going to
two
do
here for
something,
you.
he's going to do it.
It's a distraction. She's a mouthpiece for the Democrat. Who cares what she says? Did she say anything about the migrants that have brutally
No.
murdered
No.
American citizens? Well, it's always odd when churches talk about politics.
That's a
They
good
don't
one.
pay property tax.
That's a good one. I like that.
Well, there was another pastor that I think he gave part of the benediction. He has a church in Detroit. And he
Benediction at the inaugural?
Yes.
Yes.
And he also was on to comment on Fox News anyway yesterday about this particular clergy person, and said she missed the opportunity to talk about what she actually represents in terms of her religion being, if she's a Christian, she should be talking about the saving grace of Jesus Christ. And she had the pulpit, she had the microphone, she had the camera.
Episcopalians don't generally do that.
I understand that, but I mean, I'm just saying, he went in that direction versus admonishing the President of the United States for what he did. And one of the other comments about the particular executive those two orders that he gave in terms of one saying, well, they're male and female. And now she's saying, all these kids are feeling like they're going to be beat on. It shouldn't be, because we have laws that state that they have their rights too, regardless of what their views are. But years and years ago, it was that the parents and the adults are causing the issues with the kids, because the kids can figure out an awful lot of things amongst themselves. We had, when I was on the school committee, there were students that were trans. That's a long time ago. We didn't make a big deal out of it. We didn't throw it down anybody's throat. We knew that there was some issues there, and we tried to support what was going on with the parents and the student, and the kids understood it, and they were fine. But I think one of the issues that we're not talking about on a national level is the fact that when you have an opinion or you have a view and you try to shove it down somebody else's throat, at some point they're going to push back.
That's why
and that's exactly how he got
that's
elected.
why he won the election.
Was because people got tired of all
Right.
of this stuff that they didn't believe in, that they were supposed to believe in, and if you didn't believe in it, at some point, maybe you weren't going to have a job, or you weren't, like for instance, with the vaccinations. If they didn't believe in it, they got fired. Okay. And if you didn't believe in certain things, you didn't get the job because you didn't fit the DEI perception.
When you got this one.
How about President Obama's pastor? It's no secret he disliked America.
That
Well,
is
he
true.
was like one of the other ones that they had on one of the other shows that basically said, damn America. And then you have the counter of who the minister was in Detroit saying, that's not what the Bible tells us to do. See, that's one of the other things that I read a post on Facebook, something about biblical. There's nothing in there that singles out any particular group that you're supposed to hate, unless it's those people that that don't believe or don't, that have Satan or something to those effects, which I don't want to get into all of those details. We should have somebody on to explain most of it. But that's what that minister was trying to say, is a lot of the stuff that they're out there saying is not biblically based. And what we're even to say, make America great again, that's not necessarily biblically based either, because
I
it
hope
doesn't
it isn't.
say anything. Well, first of all, it's not us. But I mean, to say, make Israel great, you would in the name of Jehovah, but you wouldn't just simply because you want it politically great. Do you know? Am I making a point, or am I out in left field here?
No,
Or
I
right
mean, I
field,
think,
as the case may be.
again, I think it's interesting because, and something that Bob said earlier about people, Democrats, moving a little bit. I was watching a clip of Fox News has a show called The Five. I don't know if you've ever seen that. And I don't usually watch it, but occasionally I'll see a clip. And I did see this clip, and the point was that the liberal or the left-wing person that's on the panel, there's 5 people, 5 Fox personalities, and 4 are generally on the conservative side, and 1 is on the liberal side. And the woman's name is Jessica Tarnoff. Well, anyway, so they asked her about, she was complaining about the executive orders. So they said, well, did he issue any executive orders that you could agree with or that you liked? And I was shocked to hear her say that she felt that, she said, I really think the left went too far with DEI. Now, this is from a very left-wing person.
Yeah, she's more left.
And
than
I
the guy.
was flabbergasted that she would say that, okay? And I say, well, okay, good for her honesty, And again, I've said it before on this show, I'll say it again. I have no problem with, I'm not left-wing, but I have absolutely no problem with people who are left-wing. But it's nice to have people say, and I'll say this on the right side too, right-wingers, when you're wrong, it's nice to hear you admit that, okay? And you increase your credibility when you do that. Because
too, if you-
nobody has the lock on truth. Washington D.C. is more like the WWE. Yeah, okay. It's all theater in the ring and then a beer and a slap on the back. There's a lot of truth to that statement. There's a lot of truth to that statement. I did not see Stormy at the inauguration. Did any of you see her? Stormy Daniels? What's her real name again? I forget.
You know, when you brought up the subject
Yeah.
of DEI, I was always someone that was into merit-based type of stuff.
Well, I think most people are.
Well,
And
that's 'cause it's
my age
logical.
group, I know I was in the first volunteer army, and I worked my head off. I went in at 255 pounds. I came home 16 weeks later, weighed 195, and got married. But I remember having the expert infantry badge. I remember going up for sergeant, and they told me, "I'm sorry, we have to fill quotas." Affirmative action wiped me out. Made me say, I'm getting out. I wanted to be a lifer in the Army, and after that, I said goodbye. And now the Supreme Court got rid of affirmative action. Getting back to DEI, I think it's only at a federal level. I think in our state, it won't change.
Well, yes, but you
I
have
don't think
committees,
so.
you have, in Massachusetts, you have local committees that are DEI committees.
We have one in Chelmsford.
Yes, and it's in the school system to teach all kinds of stuff. We didn't bring that up last week, but it's out there, and now it's going to be interesting to see that if they're getting rid of all of this stuff, how it's going to come back to some of the more liberal states, along with a few other things that's out there that is occurring. Because these executive orders were signed Monday. Today's Thursday. So a lot of things need some time to develop so that you can see what the results are. But with DEI, to a certain extent, it was just going further than affirmative action. Where affirmative action, they took it off the books. Okay, we got to do something else. Let's name it this. I believe strongly that you need to take a look at everybody. I'm into merit-based, but some people will perform better in a job than they do on paper when you're doing the interview. And I'm always a person that will give somebody a chance to prove themselves, and if they can't, they're gone. But I used that to a certain extent when I got my job. I will admit that. I was interviewed, and I asked the head of the department, how many women are in your department? And there weren't any. And he knew where I was going with it. I said, how many women are you interviewing for this job? Me. So,
And they hired the woman.
and they hired me.
There
Yeah,
you go.
yeah. And the other thing was that they were like, well, we want somebody from Harvard, and we want somebody from this, and I'm looking at them going, why would anybody from Harvard want a pittance of the salary that you're offering?
And how does a Harvard education
Make you better
make
teacher?
you better a better high school chemistry teacher?
I don't know.
No, it's ridiculous.
But they were looking at the prestige of
Yeah.
having the background, because that's
So
where
when the
they
kids
were.
so when the kids walked into your class, Evelyn, on the first day, did they say, Miss Schaefer, what school did you go to?
No, they never
Nobody
asked.
asked you that question?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, they didn't ask that question.
Just checking.
And also, what happened that first year was they didn't realize I was a first-year teacher because of the way that I handled myself in a classroom. I was surprised when they
Did you
told me
look
that.
older?
No. In fact, when we had, what was it, like parent night, they all come in and
Yep.
everything like that. And there was quite a few, because it was by classroom. They followed their child's schedule. And I'm looking out, and I'm doing my own little thing, and I think it was the department head, or it was one of the fathers. I don't recall. I mean, that was like almost 50 years ago. And they had never seen that many people show up in chemistry, especially fathers. And I think one of them said, my son came home and told me about the chemistry teacher. We just had to come in and see what he was talking about because I was 21.
Yeah, the men all wanted to see a young woman. That's what it was.
Well, they wanted to see what the kids were talking about with the fact that they had this young teacher teaching, I guess.
It was unusual when I was in high school. In my school,
I was amused.
there was only one woman, and this is in 1960, there was only one woman in the entire math science department, Miss Chodrow. In fact, I had her, she's a good teacher, but she taught math, but all the other math and science teachers were men. She was the only woman in the entire science department. So that was probably revolutionary back then.
I don't remember. I think when I was hired, it wasn't the science department because they had a math department. They hired a woman, because she was my age, out of college, to teach math. And I don't recall that one year that there were a whole lot of women. After that, they did hire some women, and some of them, I think the lady that was teaching, because at the time, that particular school they had combined the junior high, or what they called junior high in those days, and the high school. So you had 7 through 12 in one building. And so you had junior high science, and they did hire a woman there. She was older than I was. She wasn't old, but she was older than I was. Very lovely lady, and that. But it was an interesting thing. But the reason I switched some of my majors was because I wanted a job. I didn't want to be part of a dime a dozen. You had to stand out somehow, and so I picked chemistry. It wasn't easy. Where it became easy was when I worked on my master's degree.
Chemistry is tough.
Because when I worked on my master's degree, and I told my grandchildren, if you have a tough subject, figure out how you can play a game with it. And then it becomes easy because now it's a game. And it doesn't become an obstacle because, oh my God, I don't know math. Or, I can't do the calculus. But things are different today because you have technology. Before we had to do everything by hand. Mm-hmm. Now you have what do you call it? You have integral calculus calculators, and all of the different things that we did with the calculus is done on a computer or on a little device like this instead of a huge computer. I mean, the 1130 that we had, the IBM 1130, filled almost a whole room when I went to college, and then you had to do key punching. So today, it's really fascinating to me, having come from the technology when it first sort of started. I wasn't in the tubes. It was because they were trying to build a computer by tubes, vacuum tubes.
Vacuum tubes, right.
In the lab, and they were going to all the salvage places because that was one of the physics department projects was to try to build the computer out of the tubes, and it was vacuum tubes, and it was really a fascinating thing. But I mean, when you start with key punching, and you come to where we are today, where you just have an app and you touch it, it's really, to me, absolutely fascinating how far we've come.
Nice
in
picture.
Technology. And there's other stories like that, but we won't bore anybody about that. So getting back to the executive orders, I thought that the thing with the border, people knew that it was coming. And then some of the discussion over the past several days is have you seen a change? And the answer is yes. And then he's sending troops there, and he's sending the Coast Guard into the Gulf of America. That was amusing to me.
Let's talk a little bit about the mechanics, just so that people understand. So, when a federal department makes a regulation, the regulation does not take effect until it is published in the Federal Register. Now, executive orders are published in the Federal Register, but the executive orders are not under the same restriction. So an executive order, you don't have to wait till it's published in the Federal Register, and a presidential executive order takes effect immediately upon signature. Okay, so for those people who are waiting for the executive orders to be published, as of yesterday they were not. I expect that they will be either today or tomorrow published in the Federal Register. But those did take effect when the president signed them. Unlike agency regulations that do not take effect until they are published in the Federal
Did
Register.
you catch him throwing the Sharpies?
Oh, that was
Well, everything.
that was interesting.
Everything is more like a entertainment. I mean, to me, there was a lot of entertainment.
A lot of marketing going on there.
And there's a lot of catchy things. Now, to get back to the Elon Musk thing, they're picking up. Oh yeah, well, he was doing the the Nazi salute and all this other BS.
That's nonsense.
And if you heard what he said,
Nonsense.
which they didn't play because it didn't fit the narrative,
I didn't hear what he said. Tell us what he said.
he was sending love to everybody. That's what he was doing.
So,
it was
in other words, if I go like this, that's a Nazi salute?
Well, that's what the media is picking
Well,
up
I
on.
understand that,
So,
but, I mean, it's ridiculous.
So when you see that, so I think
Well,
there was
really,
somebody.
that's called grasping at straws.
Well, that's like, do we hail a taxi?
Yeah, right.
Okay,
That's-
how do we get a taxi now?
that's-
Are we
that's
doing this?
that's
And I
grasping at
can't
straws.
whistle, so I certainly couldn't do that. I'm not hailing taxis anyway. But I mean, if you do that, and hopefully I'm not going to punch you or anything because it's not intentional. But I mean, if you're doing this to try to get a taxi, is that, and then what they did was they showed Hillary Clinton, they showed Harris, they showed Obama and Michelle and all the other ones doing the same thing.
Of course.
And of course, it's okay for them to do it because it's the Democrats, because now we have
But
double standard
But
here.
don't worry about that.
Well, I wasn't worried
We just
about it.
had an election that demonstrated that most people can see through that, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because
No doubt.
they didn't even care.
I wouldn't worry about it.
They didn't even care if he was convicted of anything because they felt as though that was all
Right.
a hoax. And,
Right.
people are making comments about that. Now, let's talk about the executive order of him pardoning 1,600 people from January 6th. How do you guys feel about that?
Well, again, I haven't read, and I will have a better opinion after I read exactly what he did, but, because I have some questions. First of all, is that everybody that was convicted? I don't know the answer to that. I mean, did we convict 1,600? Did we convict 2,000? I don't know. So that's the first thing. Just, again, without knowing the details, if a person were convicted of assault or anything like that, and the sentence was excessive to what a sentence for that particular crime could be, I understand the pardon. I mean, what I hope is that when they did that, I hope that somebody looked at all the individual cases and made a determination. If they didn't do that, then I guess I have a problem with the blanket pardon, is what I'm saying.
Right, and that's where I was.
Yeah.
But I don't know how you go through 1,600 people.
Well,
But he
you don't have to pardon everybody right away.
Well, I understand that, but he did.
It could have been done, well, again, it's, to me, I think that was more of a symbolic thing for him, and what I think he's, and again, I don't want to put thoughts into anybody's brain or words into anybody's mouth, but my feeling is that he did it right away, and there'll be an initial bad reaction, and then people will forget about it quickly. So I think that was the idea, rather than dragging it out over a period of time. What's this?
This is from the Worcester School Department,
Yep.
and I'm gonna shrink it down just
Want me to read it?
please.
Let's see. A recent notification has gone out regarding ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents potentially being at bus stops. Okay, if you are aware, I guess, of any agents being at a stop, do not let any student off the bus and contact the transportation office immediately. So ICE agents are at bus stops potentially, and the Worcester School Department is directing the bus drivers to not let the kids off the bus.
Well, they're concerned that they're going to go into churches and schools and start taking kids out. That's not where they're at. People are not listening. What they're doing is they're going after people that have broken the law, that are felons.
People that have papers on them, okay? So they either have detainers or they have warrants, okay?
Right. Or they're already in jail.
Right.
And they're also going after gangs, known felons, known terrorists, whatever, because it's going to take them 4 years to probably get all those people out of here. Arbitrarily, if they come across somebody else, they've already broken the law because they came across illegally. Unfortunately, she said it only because her party lost, and that was the 5 with what you had commented. Immigration arrested hundreds in Massachusetts yesterday. Who said that? Where's the documentation? It was funny when the report. It was funny when the reporter asked President Trump about the letter in the desk. Oh, I love that. That was cute. But let's go back to
I'll
the
tell you
ICE.
one, I'll tell you,
He opened the drawer on it, that was
That was funny.
Let me look.
One executive order, again, I have not read it, but just high-level comment that I think I would agree with, and I was glad, was when he designated the drug cartels as terrorists. That should have been done 40 years ago, okay? That's 40 years too late, but better late than never.
Yeah.
And I thought, because having that done now brings all kinds of federal resources that can be used to combat drug cartels. I mean, technically, we can use troops against them, all right? So, I mean,
But that's why he sent the troops to the southern border.
That should have been done years ago. Years ago, that should have been done, okay?
And, you
So
know,
that's a good one.
With drugs, Sam,
Yeah.
they're not gonna slow drugs down that way. Not too much. They'll stop the people coming across the border, but drugs come in packages, all
Oh,
all
I
kinds of
understand
ways.
that. I understand that, but
It's
you
too
have
much
to.
money.
You have to
Too much
start.
money.
You have to use whatever resources you have to combat that. And now I agree with you. I mean, it's.
I'm glad he's got troops on
Yeah.
the border, though. I'm glad.
Well, actually, they've had troops on the border for a while. I mean, Biden did put National Guard down there, so.
I put
Yeah, they
1,500
tied his
more up in
hands.
Canada, too.
Yeah.
I think a lot
Yeah,
of drugs
that's
come
what-
through Canada, too.
Well, they
Oh,
gotta-
without
they
a
should.
doubt, without a doubt. They come through all the ports. I can remember years ago, I was down in Memphis. This is when I was working, and I had a tour of the Federal Express terminal, okay? And they gave us a demonstration with the drug sniffing dogs. It was very impressive, and if you've ever been in either Federal Express or the UPS main hub sorts FedEx is Memphis, UPS is Louisville, Kentucky. It's just vast. I mean, it's a huge warehouse environment.
Well, I think
And they
years
take two
ago.
dogs, and they go through, and the dog goes right to the.
Yeah.
little
And I
package,
think
and it's
years ago, when
unbelievable.
I don't remember
Yeah.
if I was on the school committee or a PTO, when we first got the dogs, or whenever it was, in the Chelmsford School, Police Department, there was a demonstration
Oh, I
with the
remember that.
kids.
Yes.
To show the students exactly what went on with the dogs and how they used,
Amazing.
and, in terms of the drugs. And when we talk about the security, whether it's the northern or the southern border and all of the people coming in, and as a result of it, all the drugs, it disturbs me far more on the basis that I and many other people in the Chelmsford school system and in Massachusetts worked on programs like drug-free schools. We had grants that we applied for that I worked with way back with one of the assistant superintendents because there wasn't anybody else working on the grants. And there was a lot of time and effort and money. And they even had the surcharge at one point as part of, I think, when they raised the sales tax decades ago, an increment that was supposed to go towards anti-smoking campaigns. And once they got the money, then they didn't do that. They
They spend it on other things.
That's correct.
They
And
always
so
do that. They always do
we-
that.
We worked in education
Yeah.
to try to keep students from, drugs and all the other stuff, and all of a sudden you have a president that basically is saying, I'm going to open up the border and, all this stuff is going to come in. And that's something we worked against.
And I'll get some coffee.
Sorry to interrupt.
It's okay. Maybe we should ask your
I-
comments on things. That would give us a very different perspective. We have John Moses with us. Welcome, John. Thank you for
Hello.
getting up extra special early.
Only for you. Literally only for you. Sam, maybe. You definitely.
Well, I could fall into that category also.
But I'll always be older than you.
That will never change. Can't catch up on that.
No, thank you.
Give John his own, I don't know, does that work?
On the right side, yeah, there you go.
There we go.
All right.
Welcome to Chelmsford. All right, here we go.
It's kind of-
Yeah, no. Well, we're all, anyway.
But we were
That's good.
talking about one of the executive orders to close the border, but I was relating, if you caught any of it, that with the last administration, part of why I was very upset about having an open border is allowing the drugs in, because the countless hours that I worked with many other people in terms of drug education in the Chelmsford Public Schools. And we wanted to, and we lobbied to try to keep it from coming across the southern border on a national level. When you get involved with Mass Association of School Committees, they went down, we had resolutions, there was all kinds of things that occurred in order to try to protect students in the elementary and secondary levels.
Well,
When
you
you
got
get to
the-
college, it becomes a different issue.
You got the guy here right now that can tell us what's going on currently. So are the drug situation better or worse than when you first joined the school
Of
committee?
what you're aware of.
Of what you're aware
In
of.
the schools.
Well, I think there was the explosion of fentanyl, right? I think that was something that happened. A lot of the fentanyl comes from China too. It's
Yes.
produced in China.
Yes.
I mean, as in terms of the town, though, I haven't seen any particular spike or growth in it.
That's
We
good.
also have had better resources now too. I think the thing is we've grown as communities. We have better resources in the schools to deal with things like drug addiction. Just over time, right? You learn how to deal with those things. I would definitely say fentanyl was a big thing. I'm very scared as a parent as fentanyl, right? Because kids sometimes do crazy things and they're like out with friends and you get pressured. And fentanyl is one of those things that can just immediately
Kill
have
you.
be fatal,
And what-
right?
And I'm going to admit something. I mean, I know very little about the drug trade. So what form typically does fentanyl take? Is it a tablet, a pill? What is it?
It's a powder,
powder,
but it's
okay.
incredibly potent in small doses. So you can sneak it into a pill, right? If you want to make,
Okay.
an ecstasy pill to sell at a club,
Could you mix it into a drink?
you can mix it into a drink.
Okay.
There's a
Nobody
bunch
would
of-
know.
There's a bunch of ways that you can ingest it, and the thing is the measurements are so small and the margins of error are so small that if you go over, that's why there are people, especially during the height of it. And I do think, by the way, that President Trump will go after fentanyl. I do think he will
I
go
hope so.
after fentanyl. Yeah, he's aggressive, if nothing else. So if he goes after fentanyl, I think there will be an effect. I just think that that's probably been the drug that has
That's the
scared parents.
worst, the worst one.
Right, because
It's
you
not like
all,
the '70s where you smoke some weed and you're like, you eat pizza. Like you take the wrong drug and it can
Right.
kill you.
right, but
Right.
we also had, I can't remember how long ago it was. It was before you came on the scene in Chelmsford, but we had an individual that came and we had an event at the senior center. There was a panel discussion, there was this guy that was there, he had pictures, he invited parents, we had students on the panel, there was a lot of students that were there, I mean, you filled it to capacity, there was standing room only. But that was about ecstasy when that came up, and part of what he had said, I knew it before, is that when you have a lot of the inorganic drugs,
Yeah.
okay, your body can't handle those, and there's very little coming back from that. That was what ecstasy was. When you, and I'm not promoting any drug by saying this,
Right.
but
I got a text from Bobby to Ray to get done there.
so when you have marijuana, that's grown, that's organic. When you have heroin, that's opium, that's organic. Your body, if you stop soon enough, your body can recover to a point because it's organic and the body can deal with that. But when you put something inorganic, it doesn't. That's in terms of the drugs. It's also in terms of all the food additives, and we won't get into that currently. But
Okay, so Bobby, read these first.
Mr. Holman is a nonsense guy. He will get control of the border and doesn't care about sanctuary cities and democratic governance.
I think
I
he
think he
means
said
no,
no
I think he means
nonsense.
no nonsense.
Yeah.
Right.
Washington had a pardon party
Oh,
over
yeah.
the holiday weekend. The hangover is real. I just want to stay on drugs too. Looks like it says back in 2020, the media were losing their collective minds over Trump possibly pardon his family preemptively. Check it out on YouTube.
Well, he did
Prophecy
he
is
did pardon his
hilarious.
family, 1,600 of them.
Yeah, but I'd rather
I don't think
stay-
that they were part of his family.
Just for 1 second.
They're
I'd like
pretty
to-
loyal.
For 1 second, if
Well,
we could
that's
stay
different.
on, we were talking about fentanyl and all that. I have 5 grandchildren, one's 14, very smart. 14-year-old is, let me tell you something, a lot smarter than we were at 14.
Yeah.
They got all this technology, they know how to stay away from certain things. 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, a lot of their friends and themselves like to go out drinking. That fears me more than drugs, to be honest with
No,
you.
alcohol is a drug.
But we almost forget about talking about alcohol. It's always drugs, and drugs are killing thousands of kids every day. But alcohol's causing a lot of
Well,
issues, I'm telling you.
we had programs,
Yeah.
Lowell had programs about alcohol, because there's levels. I mean, you can start right off on hard drugs. I mean, it just depends on what the situation is, and who's doing it, and whether or not you were coerced into it, or whether or not you had issues and depression. There's a lot of pieces, because that's what happened with the painkillers, was that they were giving too much too soon and pushing it. And so you ended up with kids addicted that never had alcohol or
Well, that's
tobacco or anything.
the issue is the addiction, okay? So how many former smokers at this table?
Cigarette smokers?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That was a long
Okay,
time ago.
so you
yeah.
gave that up, right?
Oh, yeah.
Was it tough?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, that's really what it is. It's addiction, all right?
But again,
Yeah.
I'm not promoting anything, I'm just explaining it, say, on a biochemical level, is that tobacco, again, is a form of a drug. You get addicted to it. If you get off of it, your body can recuperate to a certain extent. Depends on how long
Yeah.
you've been on it and whatever. The body can cleanse itself to a certain extent because it's organic and it's working with an organic substance. Alcohol, to a certain extent, is exactly the same. It just depends on how long you do that. So if you drink a lot of alcohol and you decide to stop, your liver will recuperate from that.
Can I just add, though, the older
Hopefully.
I've gotten, I've learned that my liver is less, has less ability to contribute to processing alcohol. So the hangovers are real now. So I don't care how organic that drink is.
Well,
So-
it also depends on.
Is
if you-
this a disclaimer for the show, or?
No, I'm just saying,
okay,
like,
all right.
I was in the Army. Listen, I used to be able to go out and I was able to drink
Yep.
and celebrate and do all those things. And now celebrating is like half a glass of wine because I am like, I'm going to bed now.
But see,
Well,
wine,
alcohol is a serious problem in the military,
it is.
and I'll
It
tell
is.
you, I drank excessively when I was in
Me
the
too.
Army.
It's competitive.
And part of the reason was because you had to do that in order to do some of the things that you were being asked to do, okay? It's the only way you could do some of the things if you were stoned or drunk.
Right.
Am I wrong?
Not wrong.
Okay, so that's a problem, and a lot of people were addicted, as I was addicted to the alcohol when I was in the service, and I don't drink today as a result of that, so.
but not that I want to start about all the biochemical stuff, but if you consistently drink, it's almost as if, in terms of the addiction, it's the same thing with cigarettes, it's the same thing with other
And
drugs.
coffee, no.
Is that the more you take, the more you need.
Yep.
It just increases and increases and increases, because the body sets
That's
up a
addiction.
certain amount of resistance. So you have to overcome that threshold that the body has set up, and you keep doing that, and it mounts. So if you have stopped in terms of the alcohol, and on occasion you have something, your body is reacting similar to as if you were in your teen years when you had the first drink and it was like it went to your head. But you do have different levels, again, in terms of what you drink in alcoholic beverages, because you have wine that's made out of grapes that's organic, but you don't have all of it that is there's different levels, let's put it that way, of how you drink, just as if there's different levels in terms of smoking cigarettes. If you smoke just straight tobacco, not that I'm promoting anything, it's better for your system than if you're smoking menthol cigarettes or anything that has flavors, because the carcinogens, a lot of the carcinogens are in the additives that's in the cigarettes. So that being stated, we're coming up to the 7 o'clock mark. We're going to take a short break as a transition into city life. And I don't know when John's going to cut the program, but we just want to let you know we're going to be off, and then we'll come back and we're going to have some different topics to talk about in the next hour.
And announcements.
Yes, I'm sure.
I'm waiting for the announcements, Jeff. Don't worry about that.
So,
We'll be back, thanks.
Welcome back. It's City Life. I'm Evelyn Thoren. I'm your host for about 57 plus minutes. We have our guest with us this morning, John Moses. He's on the Chelmsford School Committee, but he also wears some other hats, which we're going to talk about. And my co-hosts, Sam Chase and Bob Hoey, and John McDonough is behind the camera, sometimes on the camera, always ready to give his opinion or ask questions that we haven't had a chance to ask yet. Anyway, thank you very much, John, for coming. And
Absolutely.
we'll talk about your events, the different things that's coming up and what you're involved with.
Sure.
So if somebody has joined us that's new, you could give us a little bit of your background.
Yeah, I'll give you a quick one.
So we know that, and we thank you for your service.
Thanks.
And that you were in the Army and you were over in Afghanistan and
Yep.
some other things. So if you go through that, that leads into one of the events that's coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. We can get into that, but just some way of background. So I was actually born in Lowell, but now I've lived in Chelmsford for quite some time, although I'm still a blow-in. But I joined the Army in 1996, went through high school. You know, I was kind of a knucklehead kid, did all the work, ended up serving 23 years in the Army Reserve in 3 tours. It was kind of a hectic time in the country, and they needed a lot of help. So deployed a whole bunch of times, including Afghanistan. Moved to lovely Chelmsford. Decided that there was no way I was going to live in a town with no full day kindergarten. Ran for school committee and won with the blessing of Evelyn a little bit. And I've been there now for 9 years. So when the collapse of Afghanistan happened, you know, I've already been working in the town. I'd made a lot of relationships. So I supported Afghans as they came out of Afghanistan to come to the U.S. And I've since support local resettled Afghans and some other refugee classes as they get comfortable. And then this year we're having our first fundraiser event. We became a 501c3 called Massachusetts Afghan Alliance just about 3 months ago in October.
Yeah, and you've been on the show several times talking about that leading up to becoming official as a nonprofit.
Yeah.
And do you have any locations yet if people want to donate?
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely. Actually, I should have gave you that one. So this week, I'll do this first, though.
It's okay, I'll remember to ask the question.
So it's massafghanalliance.org/donate if you'd like to donate. What John is showing on the screen is we're actually having our big first fundraiser event this year. So we actually were able to apply for and we received an AAPI grant, Asian American Pacific Islanders Commission, from the state of Massachusetts, $5,000 to support. This is one of our first events. It's a community education event on January 31st, end of the month, 6 to 9 at the Chelmsford Center for the Arts. And if you go to that second page, John, I'll show you who some of the guests are. We have some phenomenal guests. It's a focus on women. So Beheshta, she lives in Harvard, Mass. She came in through the airport. So when everything collapsed in Afghanistan, her family was one that got pulled out through the airport. She was in process. And she's all through the process now. And Sola actually came long ago. She came, I think, in 2019, 2018. Actually escaped to Pakistan for a long time and really found her own way out and into the United States. And now she's written a book called Defiant Dreams, where she fought against this kind of oppression and made it to the U.S. She lives down in the Acton area. She lives really close to Acton, Maynard. So these are going to be a really great event. Bahish is doing an art event. They're these living pictures that you put up on the wall and you look at it with an app and they come to life and they tell her story and the story of the people in her town that have been helping the Afghans. And then Sola's going to get to speak about her book and she's going to do signed copies. 50 copies of the book are being provided to those who RSVP. So we purchased the books and we're going to donate some to the library. We got quite a few out there.
You may also want to put one in the Chelmsford
Yep.
High School library.
Absolutely. I have a list, don't you worry.
Oh, I'm sure, but it can't hurt to see exactly what you're up to. How many people have RSVP'd so far?
So far, about 50. So we're actually changing the format. We were going to do like a big food event. It was going to be very intimate, and then people started coming out of the woodwork. So out of the gate, we got about 40 people, and then people have been really pushing to advertise it, and people have been reaching out to me. So RSVP'd, I have about 40 to 50, but on paper, I think I have much more. So we're actually going to change it from an intimate type of event. We're going to have more of a walkthrough event with speaking and
More PR and
Yeah.
So if people, yeah.
Informative.
That's
Yeah,
right.
more informative and
Yeah,
educational.
I think
People
that,
will show up without RSVPing, they can still
Yeah.
participate.
Right, and that's
Right.
the thing we didn't want to do is have a closed door. So the
Right.
art section, the speech part will probably reserve for the RSVPs first, right, the end when they speak. But
Mm-hmm.
the whole event is going to be gorgeous. You should see the artwork and the work that Beheshta put into it. She's been working on her 15-minute speech. She's 19 years old, and she's at Middlesex.
wow.
She got here without a high school diploma, and when the MCAS requirements changed, because she went through high school, but she couldn't pass the MCAS. When the MCAS requirement changed, she was finally able to get her diploma and go to college.
And these people you're trying to help, most of them are on our side, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Right?
So
Just
everybody,
so people know that.
especially Afghans, I can't speak for I've helped hundreds and hundreds of Afghans. So they go through one of the most extensive vetting processes out of any refugee class. And we have the tools and the systems and the people in place to do those, because special immigrant visas, which they had in Iraq, they had in Afghanistan, they had something similar in Vietnam. They have to be vetted, and their background has to be really, really looked at, and they have to be cleared as a family. So if you had one guy that didn't like the U.S., the whole family would have a chance of not coming. It's more thorough than a lot of security clearance.
The
for America.
Taliban, were they really cruel to women?
Oh,
That's
yeah.
the way I think anyways.
So during the escape and beyond, the Taliban have continued to devolve back into what they were trying to be in the 90s. I have families that are separated still in town who are not going to get, because some of the executive orders they were actually pausing everything, right? But they still talk to their daughters or their family overseas. We have stories of, we can have an adult conversation. There's been murders, there's been sexual assaults, there's been kidnappings, forced marriages. The women aren't allowed to go to school. They're not allowed to stand next to a window. They're not allowed to speak out loud outside, or they get beat. They get murdered. They get kidnapped. And all of the punishment is as barbaric as they can make it. The Taliban are not human in the sense of how they feel emotion or how they treat people, especially women, though.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I figured that.
No, they're bad guys. See, this is the thing about different Afghans, so it's a good question. Veterans of Afghanistan love Afghans, and we know the difference between the Taliban and the Afghans. And we were really protecting them from the Taliban, and now we know why, right? Because they came back and did it again. So they weren't going to do damage to the people I cared about again, so we helped them get here.
right, but you can also draw that analogy with other political groups that weren't that great. You can take a look at Germany.
Yeah.
And you have the Nazis, but not all Germans were Nazis. Some people that were Nazis were there to try to help other people. So you have the same situation, same thing in Italy. Not everybody that was Italian was a fascist or liked Mussolini. It's just that they came to dictatorship and, very oppressive, among other things that were, atrocious things against other humans. And same thing in this country when you had slaves. They're all humans. When you take a look at biologically, but some people were treated like they were animals or that they were subhumans or whatever. And you can see that across the thousands of years of history that we have. It doesn't make it right.
Right.
And it's unfortunate that that's what happens, but those of us that believe in God, people will be judged on that basis, which is unfortunate for those people, but it's black and white. That's the way it is. And so when people are concerned about any particular group that is coming in as refugees, again, it's an individual basis or it's a vetting process. It's not collective because not everybody is all equal in terms of their political and or religious levels of what it is and their motives. But you've done an excessive amount of work. There's a lot of people that have worked with you. You've told me that, Maria Santos, who's also on the Chelmsford School Committee, she's been on here.
And running again for re-election.
Well, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that. Among other
Forget
things.
now, we got to get that in there.
Oh, yeah, I know. I'm not going to forget that.
Okay.
This would be my year if I was going to run, or if I had stayed on the committee. But she has done pro bono work, and there's an awful lot of people out there that's doing those kinds of things. She's not the only immigration lawyer that's doing that, because they find, and she's not the only lawyer that does pro bono work on other issues, because
yeah.
I found that out too.
Yeah.
And over
Which
my
is
lifetime.
exceptionally generous. I don't think people realize how many hours. So lawyers are paid on hours, and I know people make jokes about it, but honestly, like some of these cases, like a green card case, all the way up. I mean, it's hundreds of hours of free labor on behalf of a firm. And if you ever see Maria's work, she's incredibly detailed.
Oh,
You can tell,
that would not surprise me.
Yeah, she's an incredible lawyer, an incredible person.
That's why we tried to get her on the Board of Assessors, but.
I know.
Well,
When you live in Lowell, right, and I'm 70, I've lived here my whole life. I was in the Army for 3 years, but I never went overseas. I was one of the lucky ones. The war ended when I was in my training, and I was sent to Colorado. But we've picked up a lot of Southeast Asians over the past 50 years from war-torn countries. And then just off TV and movies that I've seen, Afghanistan, I mean, they had to go through Russia for about 20-something years, having war. Then America was over there. Boy, they're resilient people.
Yeah.
They really are.
They've been they're the center of the Silk Road, right? They were one of the transit ways for all of the trade going over history, and that place has been run over by Genghis Khan and Alexander the Great. Everybody has conquered Afghanistan a bunch of times. I think the Russians, they dealt with the British in the 30s. They dealt with the Russians, who were exceptionally cruel. Then they dealt with the Taliban. And then the U.S. came in, and we essentially gave Afghanistan an opportunity to live essentially a free life, especially in some of the safest parts after the war, had been around for a little while. A lot of the places were safe, and people started going to college. So there's generations of Afghans now that have lived a free-ish life. And a lot of them wanted to come here and work specifically over those 20 years to find their way to a better life. So, they are resilient people, especially the women. I think the women and girls that have gotten out understand what they would have lost.
Can't even imagine. And I would also guess that it is increasingly more difficult for repressive political regimes to operate in the face of the internet and social media. It's much more difficult. Is that a
No, it's
statement?
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's not only it's difficult for them. It's also difficult for the people that have the phones and are able to send the information. I think.
Right.
This isn't 1991. They have electric. I mean, it's a fully functioning country that the U.S. helped build, and they have access to phones and information. They see photos from their families in the United States while they've been stuck in an apartment for months and months and months. That's really difficult. But it also is a good window into the world of refugees and resettled people, because you see the photos. Not all of your families come out. So there are refugee families that were on the list to go, they had done certain work for the U.S., and then there's a path that's open to them, but they don't make it because maybe the Taliban find them or whatever. And people know those stories because they all share them. They're all a community. So, technology has made it easier in some ways and made it harder in other ways. And also the Taliban aren't idiots. They have young Taliban that know how to use computers and know how to track phones. They have their own intelligence service. They're not stupid. So only some of them live in caves, and they're usually the guys, that get blown up and shot at. So, but the Taliban, no bueno. Technology has been a really good addition, and I hope they keep it open. So we'll see though.
But what also has surprised me, not just because we pulled out of there, but even prior to that, is that we have a lot of female senators and representatives that never I didn't see like a huge group of them going, look at the oppression for women over there and women's rights, and we need to do this, this, and this. And I didn't see any of that kind of support, which has always bothered me. It disturbs me that you just don't have a lot of them in the past. I don't know what they're doing currently, probably nothing, because I don't hear anything about it. And maybe if you know anything, that would be welcome. But you would think that if there was persecution, and you see that also in China with different groups when we talk about refugees want to come out, and that the genocide that's happening there, and there's other types of things like that around the world, and you don't see in this country those that are talking about the rights here actually having any action about the rights in other countries, or speaking up about that, or trying to help those peoples too.
Well, if I think I get your angle here, but I think women are fighting for their rights here now. So I don't know if they have time for, other countries. So I think there are women fighting for their own
Well,
rights.
and the
Their
fact-
own equality,
And
I
the
think.
fact of the matter is, I mean, I think and I agree with actually both of you, but the fact is that if you're an American, whether you're a politician or not, you have the ability to affect change here. You don't have the ability individually to affect change in another country.
Right,
okay?
like
So
the
that's the problem.
Right, and the situation is unique, and there are actually, just because you don't see it, doesn't, so I was
Right.
just thinking about it. So there's a group, an organization called Task Force NICS. All they do is help women overseas, specifically Afghans in this case, because that's who the people I work with. But Task Force NICS is an all-woman, it's all volunteer, all women-driven, and they fight absolutely super hard in Afghanistan to keep women safe. We have people that do more operational type stuff in Afghanistan for women, safe houses. So we
Good
have
to know.
kind of, without getting into detail, there's like an underground railroad into Pakistan that some people operate, and that's for sexual assault victims. So they have built up a bunch of alleys. Now remember, these people are sometimes in the UK, sometimes these are just people that want to help. A lot of that work you're not going to see because, first of all, the Taliban's not going to advertise that there's a women's program in Afghanistan, and a lot of times you got to kind of keep them quiet because you're trying to help women and not expose them.
Well, their lives are endangered.
Their lives are, there are thousands of people doing
Right.
work with women, and we're focusing on women here on the other side in 2025. That's where we're going to go. But I do think just because you don't see it doesn't mean there aren't Americans doing it. Just some, quiet professionals that work in those countries typically don't. We're not going to shout it out to the rooftops, but they are out there for sure.
Good to know.
There's always good Americans out there. There always are.
Right, and I think that there needs to be all of the programs on awareness, because sometimes we get too comfortable, and we don't realize that in becoming too comfortable here, we could also lose those freedoms if we're not vocal enough and we're not made aware of what is going on, lulled into a sense of, okay, everything's okay in the world, and it's all, I don't know, rainbows, no pun intended with anything there.
What have we got today, kiddo?
Cinnamon apple,
Thank you.
Cinnamon apple.
lots of cinnamon. By the way, cinnamon is good for you, John, besides all the sugar that isn't.
So you put the cinnamon in to counteract the sugar? Is that what you do?
Well,
Oh.
Anyway, we won't get into all of that analogy unless we want to talk about food and food additives and things that are healthy for
I
you.
know nothing about those things, but so don't ask me any on that. I eat like a trash panda, honestly. I eat pizza.
Like a what?
Trash panda.
I've never heard that term.
No, I
I
haven't
just
heard
eat
that either.
everything. I still eat like sometimes, not anymore. I actually
You don't eat bamboo? Or,
No,
Oh,
but I
okay.
Or
definitely eat
eucalyptus. That's another one.
Trash panda.
Trash panda. I just eat whatever put in front of me. I've actually had to get better. I had to go to the doctor and my
You look fine.
Thank you. My cholesterol was a tiny bit elevated, but I'm working on it.
So what was your number?
Oh, I don't remember. My wife would probably know. She
Oh, she would definitely know.
Yeah, she's like, so if I'm gonna go to the doctor, my wife, Cindy Moses, who's a wonderful, she's actually, just let me, while we're here for a second, like, if you want to talk about somebody who's supportive, I think people don't realize a lot of volunteers and 501c3 operators, people in communities like this, without your spouse, I mean, you'd be screwed. So Cindy has supported me since the day since we met. I was in the Army, she supported me through deployments, and she's still at home supporting me through, every time I run for an office, she's like, really? And I'm like, yeah, and she just has gone with it her whole, I would be really hard, I felt, to be with, because it's just I just do so many things, but she's been phenomenal. She's a good foundation for my work, for sure. And my life, and my kids, and she's just done all the right things. So thanks, Cindy. I know you're not watching yet, but
But it's always nice to thank your wife or.
yeah.
Absolutely.
And my
because-
kids.
Yeah, because that shows that you know and appreciate and recognize
If it weren't for
that
my wife,
you
I'd
need it.
have died 30 years ago.
That's right, you get it.
I know that.
Yeah.
And we won't talk to Glenn.
So-
But in a relationship, you need to support each other sometime, and it's not 50-50. So people will, pick up the slack on whatever end it is because they value that relationship, and you happen to have one of those, I have one of those, and so and each of us have that. So it's, sometimes I think it's a novel idea today, because people are not getting married and actually
Yeah.
making the commitments, because it's maybe the throwaway society is also with the relationships. If it doesn't work, we just move on.
Maybe. We've been together almost 20 years, 19 years. So, I mean, it's been a ride. It was definitely, it's not easy though. I mean, when you're deployed in the Army and you're doing all that stuff, I think there's some real challenges to like staying together. But if you want to do it, you do it.
Yeah,
And,
the separation is,
Yeah.
physical
John, I'm
separation
an
is.
advocate for paying our school committee and our
Yes.
selectmen.
Yes.
You're an elected school committee member.
Yeah.
What is the value monetarily that it's worth on the market?
Oh, I have no idea. I haven't really considered, the only conversations I've
Is
ever
it worth 50 cents? Is it worth 50,000?
I think the work school committees do are priceless. I don't think there is a cost on.
See, my firm belief is only rich guys can run. If you're not as affluent as you are, you have an obligation to your family first.
Sure.
All your kids want cell phones. Mm-hmm. They all want an Apple laptop, nothing but Apple.
Yeah.
They all expect internet all over the house. They expect a television in their room. All this stuff, what didn't exist in the 1950s when everybody worked for free. So considering all the extra costs you have, that's why I put it out there. You don't have an answer, so that's okay. Thanks.
Well,
I have an answer in a way, because
Yeah, because
I was
you
elected
promoted all
4
of that.
different times. You sacrifice yourself, but hopefully your wife has a good job.
Right.
And can cover all those expenses, and if she wants to help you out, she'll do that, and that's how I got through it.
Well, again, Bobby, my gripe there is only rich people can run.
Well, you're right in a
To
way,
an
John.
extent, he's right. So, and John knows that. Well, we all know it because we've all done elective office.
I was broke when I joined, so I don't know what anybody.
But it does, I'll speak for select board, and I think the same thing is true of school committee. If you do the job the way it should be done, and I'll speak for select board, it costs you money out of pocket, not just time, but actual
Absolutely.
cash.
Yeah.
Actual cash, it costs you. So to the extent that it does, you ought to be, in my opinion, I agree with John, you ought to be compensated. And when I first went on the select board, the selectmen got a stipend of $1,500 a year. So if you translate that into today's money, that would be about $3,000, okay? So and if you were chair, you got an extra 500, so 200. Okay, so, and a number of the positions in town were compensated. School committee was not, but the assessors got a stipend, the moderator got a stipend, cemetery commissioners got a stipend. Okay, a town meeting took that away about 20 years ago, because once you get even $1, okay, it entitles you to buy into the town's insurance.
That's great.
And that's why they eliminated the money, because they didn't want
Why?
a select board member
who doesn't
buying
want
into the
insurance?
town's insurance.
Who doesn't want health insurance?
Well,
Put your
everybody
hand
wants
up.
it. No, but the town
Then
meeting.
you're running for health insurance
Yeah.
and not for the town.
And quite frankly, there were a couple of people
Right.
who were doing that, because the minute that changed, they left office.
Hey, you know what?
I've seen that.
All the people in town hall are there for the money.
Well, everybody's there for their
Right,
work.
of course.
Well, they're working.
They're
Why
working.
would they work for nothing?
Well,
But
that's
when
what-
you ask the
My
question,
point is exactly that. Why would you get a selectman or a school committee guy for nothing?
well, it depends, again, on your patriotism and where you're going, but you asked a
Let me
question.
cover my
So let me-
heart. and-
They should be
Let me
compensated.
interject. I mean, I made a choice to run. I made a choice to.
So did
pull.
I.
Yeah, nobody
Right.
held the gun.
I know I'm not getting paid for it. I know how many hours. The other thing though is if you've been in for a long time, you get much more experience. So school committee takes less time than it used to, because I know how to do things now. I actually
Right.
have contract negotiations, which I think will go great.
Yeah, well, what I
That's the only
found.
That's good to hear.
What
Yeah, I
I
think
found
we're
with
good. I'm positive.
with experience is that you can do stuff in less time, but what I ended up doing was I had less time to do stuff, so I added more stuff.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I ended up being
I founded a whole 501, so here we are.
Right, but I don't know if John is read the article that I sent. I didn't send it to you, and I can if you
Evelyn,
want to
God
read
bless
it.
you, you send me 50 articles and I don't.
No, I only sent 2 this time. But anyway, there was an article and there's a bill from the Massachusetts Teachers Association in the legislature to establish a minimum salary in the public school system in Massachusetts.
For teachers.
For teachers. They
70
want a
grand, I
quote-unquote
think.
living wage.
Yeah.
And they want to start, it's called an act relative to education, educator pay, and it guarantees a salary of $70,000 a year for teachers and $55,000 a year for education support professionals. You know what the numbers are already, so don't say anything yet. The bill calls for another pay hike in 2030, where it gets to 80,000 and then respectively 65 for the support personnel. And then they want to have legislation that will allow them to strike if they can't get this. The problem,
This is the MTA?
yes.
Okay, all right.
That's
This is
go- that's not-
Massachusetts.
That's not going anywhere.
And, but the problem is, yeah, you'd love to be able to do something like that, but your budgets don't allow that, so that if all of a sudden you have that increase, where the heck are you gonna get the money? So that's maybe what he is referring to, is the fact that you would have a standard, rather than to have Chelmsford, Lowell,
Right.
Kingsborough, Tewksbury, Boston, all different levels and all different entries, and all of a sudden now you just have a blanket base.
What's the budget at Chelmsford, Evelyn?
School or town?
It's about 160 million.
160.
And we're 60, well, not anymore, but the education is 60% of that.
Let's make it 161 and pay our elected officials a fair compensation.
Right, but you do understand, as in your budget with your business, is if you pay your employees a fair thing, the money's gotta come from somewhere else if you
All I
have a
want
limited
is,
revenue.
I want a regular guy, not like me, I got a few extra bucks. I want a regular guy or a regular gal that's just getting by to be able to say, you know, I'm gonna run for that office, they're gonna give me $50,000 a year, they're gonna give me 50 cents a year.
Well, are we,
And be able to pay for her kids' cell phone bills, be able to live in the lifestyle that she richly deserves, just as the viewers sitting at home.
right, but are we talking about paying teachers or paying politicians?
He's
Elected
talking about-
officials, you can
he's-
call them
yeah.
whatever,
Oh,
you
okay.
can
Let
call
me
them
ask-
Nazis.
I'm talking about paying
You can call them Nazis,
teachers.
whatever you want to call them, Evelyn. But we
That's
have
what I
a
was
lot of
talking about.
elected officials that work for zippity doo.
Let me ask John a question based on what you just said, what Evelyn just said. So she's talking about a bill establishing a minimum base pay for teachers. So what is the entry-level pay, do you know?
I know what our average is. It's like.
Okay.
Yeah,
Don't
we have
worry
a
me,
whole-
I haven't been in it for
It's
a
been a
while.
long time.
So you're 22 years old, you just graduated from school.
Yeah.
You just got hired by the Chelmsford School District, you have a starting, so with it, I mean, it doesn't have to be
I
exact.
think it's like 60 or something.
All right, well,
65.
They've moved it up.
It's
That's
gone
pretty
up,
good,
for
that's
sure.
not bad, so
It's-
60,000 roughly, okay.
Sam, you got these.
All right, Mr. Moses is right, there you, that's a good start.
Wow, that's never happened before.
That's not from your wife, by the
No.
way. The Taliban is an evil group, yet Donald Trump bargained with them and even invited them to Camp David, setting the stage for a hasty withdrawal from Afghanistan. Disgraceful.
May I comment on that? I
Yeah,
think
you-
that there's some. I have some-
You're the expert.
Here's
Go
the
ahead.
thing, before we get into, I do agree with some of this. I think it's really important to know, this has been really important and a distinction that both Democrats and Republicans, we've really struggled with. Afghanistan started 20 years prior, right? 20-something years prior in 2001, right? Bush came in, he did a whole bunch of stuff. He made a lot of mistakes too. Obama comes in, makes a whole bunch of mistakes too. Donald Trump comes in, makes a couple mistakes. Some of those were mistakes. Releasing the prisoners from the Taliban prisons was a mistake, and there were mistakes. President Biden comes in, and there were mistakes. I really think it would be more healthy for us as a country to look at Afghanistan as an American war. It wasn't Republican and Democrat. We all voted for people that kept sending us to the war and kept helping us build the country through mistake after mistake. And this includes, by the way, so Obama, who was a very pro-immigration, really put the screws on some of those programs for SIV. And then when Donald Trump came in, he had different priorities and he deprioritized a lot of the Afghan movement. And then when President Biden came in, he doesn't prepare for this incredible hasty withdrawal, which he did as probably as best as any president could do, but it was still just an entire, there was no other way Afghanistan was going to end, and it's an American war, and it really does a disservice to all of the service members that went there and went through all of these different presidents and watched Americans support the war through their votes and through whatever.
John, weren't the Russians there before
I
us?
agree with
Oh,
you.
yeah.
And the Russians lost too.
Oh,
Now,
yeah.
can I,
So
can
we
I
got
make,
more text for Sam to read. Go ahead, Sam.
okay, can I make just one comment on the previous one? You know, you can be criticized as a leader for talking to your adversaries, but you're never going to make any progress if you don't talk to your
Right.
adversaries.
Right.
Okay, so I just want to make that comment. So go ahead, John, I'll read whatever it was you put up there.
All righty.
Yeah. We can have a lot of discussion on that.
Anyone involved in government only care about the Benjamins, not the people.
I've never made $1. Actually, I was in the Army, so
Yeah.
that's technically.
But you're on the school committee. You don't get paid.
I don't get
okay?
paid.
Right.
Moving right along.
Even though Chelmsford is considered
would
an
say-
affluent community, not everyone in Chelmsford is rich.
Well, unless we don't change some of our single-family house
Here we
policies.
go.
Could we talk about Chelmsford for a minute?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, we can talk about Chelmsford for the next 20 minutes if you'd like to.
It's your show, John. You're
So
the guest.
I live in South Chelmsford. Hopefully there's some Chelmsford people. Did you watch the special session on Hart Pond where they were looking at the Maxwell property?
No.
So the Maxwell property is that
Was that planning board meeting?
4-H fairgrounds. You come down.
Yes.
So that's a weird property and it's commercial and they're trying to figure out how to fit what they're going to do with it, right? And allow the owner of the property to sell for value and all this stuff. And so it's this really weird shaped property with a single entrance, so it's non-conforming and all this thing. And I had to watch a meeting where for like 45 minutes, people were trying to figure out how to jam 4 single-family homes on that weird lot that has a shared driveway. And I was like, put 2 duplexes. Why can't? And then, of course, what the response to that is, well, that's going to become affordable housing. They're going to claim the pond as a benefit. I actually think if you can't
Can they
meet the
do
levy,
that?
if you can't meet your levy in a town,
Is this a 40B project that we're talking about?
no, this is just, no, there's no project. They're trying to figure out what they can fit on this lot.
Oh, I see, okay.
And the
all right.
most creative idea I heard the whole time, over and over again, the only idea I've heard is, let's try to jam 4 single-family homes on it. And I'm like, this is part of the problem. With a town like Chelmsford, if you're not making your levy, right, at 2.5, which is what we're allowed to charge, you have to do it with growth. And we have failed as a town over the past 4 years to grow enough to cover our levy. And I know some of it's Medicaid costs and other things, but our town needs to grow to
What
keep
ki-
up with it. We're a full-service town.
What
with
kind of growth are you advocating for?
people, housing,
Housing?
smaller, less.
Versus commercial?
Well, commercial, our footprint's really low anyway. I don't think our tax rate's great on the commercial side. And it's not, we're really like, what, 95% residential?
So are you looking at growth in terms of numbers of houses?
I'm looking at growth in terms of opportunity, bringing new people
All
into
right,
the
so if you
community.
were going to do that, all right, because apparently they didn't suggest this, they're looking at what the current zoning would be and how you get a house with the
RB.
current zoning, regardless of where your boundaries go. But if you want to be creative, what you do is you take property like that and you create a zone, a type of zone, Sam can, this is off-the-wall thinking, which just
Getting into
came
my
up.
area now, but go ahead.
All right, yeah. Is that you take it and you have your tiny houses. Okay? And that way, then, you can put a higher concentration on certain areas with tiny houses. The other issue you have when you start to grow, because we have a limit on our sewer capacity, is now we're going back to having space for septic. I really am a proponent of septic because
lot of it- a
it
lot
puts
of-
the water back in the
A
ground.
lot of properties won't perk either. So once you have sewer, now you can build in areas where you couldn't build previously, okay?
Oh, yeah, and Glenn and I
That's
have a
what, and
history
that's
with that.
exactly what happened in Chelmsford. So when the sewer came in, and perfect example, right across the street from where I live off of Summer Street, and you know what's the name of the place? Summer Place, which is where,
Yeah.
Okay, so prior to the sewer coming in, that was all woods, all
Yeah.
right? And the reason it was woods is because you couldn't build on it, because it was too wet and it
Right.
wouldn't perk. Once the sewer came in, bang, now you got the project. Okay, so that happened all over Chelmsford. So we
Yeah.
did a lot of building post the sewer coming in. Of course,
Yeah.
now we're at capacity.
Absolutely.
So the question is, and any builder, what they're looking to do is obviously maximize their profits. So
Yep.
for a builder, it's better to build a dense housing project on an acre or two of land than it is to build single or even duplex homes, because you're going to get
This is
a
an
better
example, though.
return.
My point
Right.
is not single family, right? We're constantly going back to the RB zoning where it's like
Yeah.
single family. Oh, weird plot of land, single family.
Mm-hmm.
And then I hear, some of the members of that particular board talking about, well, how does that increase single family ownership? I hear these weird conversations in town all the time about, it's a village. Chelmsford's a village. South Chelmsford's a village. The last house they built was like 6,000 square feet. So I don't know what village anybody's living in anymore.
It's a big
And
house.
Can't
the thing is, the town needs to grow. We're about to lose 2.5 million this year out of our budget. So, and the school's gonna eat part of that. We don't know where that's gonna come from.
I can help you.
I know you can. I'm
Because,
sure you.
because all the time that I was on the school committee, all we did was reduce that budget. And because if you wanted to take a look at a sine curve, okay, I came in like this, and immediately we go down, okay? And now, see, and when you came in, you were on the rise of
Yeah.
that.
The problem,
And-
Evelyn, was that a lot of that was deferred maintenance. That's how you guys did it, okay? And that's not, to my way of thinking, the right way to do it.
No, well,
We're dealing with tons of maintenance right now.
Yeah.
Right, but
good
we
news is
also-
though, right, MSBA,
Right.
we did get MSBA. So
Yeah.
that's actually, we're in the next steps of that. So we have a good chance of building a new school, so.
Right, and then Jay was on last week, so he talked about all of the options that you guys would look at.
Yep.
And this is like the first committee since they began anything that I'm not on. But that's okay, I'm busy enough with everything else in terms of family. But when we're talking about any kind of zoning, we have Monday night, we have the approval for the additional dwellings. The concern that I have in anything in terms of your growth is if you maximize the number of people and families on the land.
Paying
you-
taxes.
You increase the services, the cost of the
do.
services if you have children. That's why when I ran for selectman in 1995, I advocated for keeping the golf course because they wanted to turn that, again, it was privately owned, and they offered it to the town first to purchase it. And I advocated for the town to purchase it because if you put all those houses on, I did the math, and it was going to cost the town far more money than the revenue that they would get from the real estate taxes that they were going to receive. So you have to make sure that you balance it out. I'm not against what you're saying. I just want, in terms of the budget, because I'm looking at the school department budget, not the municipal, just the school budget. How do we meet those needs, especially with the increases in technology, so you identify more people for special education? And then you have those additional costs in terms of not necessarily out-of-district placements, but all of the additional personnel you need for those students. So,
I understand all those things. I still believe that we have not kept up with planning. And I also think we have a real panache for going out and finding open properties and putting them in conservation, putting them in open space, which I think is also important. I think those things are important, but we really have put ourselves into kind of corner. And to put all this work into this for years and years and years and not be able to keep up with the growth. The past, whatever we think of the past two presidents, there's been growth between both of them. And none of that growth has actually put us to level service budgeting. So to get to level service this year, there's gonna have to be,
reductions.
How about
gonna
that
be-
place in North Chelmsford? It's beautiful, it's huge too, where the old reform school was.
Yes, but they created their
Princeton-
own private
properties.
source
Yeah,
system.
they did, but that's quite a place now.
yeah.
I got a
these-
couple issues I'm gonna push out there. More buildings means kicking Bambi out of her house.
Who's Bambi?
Who's Bambi? Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you talking about, conservation wise? I get it, but Bambi's got their own place to live. I don't know. We have to focus on budgets and getting our services done. We have tons of conservation land in our town and the surrounding areas. And that's it. That's my opinion on it. I think we haven't grown enough. I think.
Okay, so-
I think there's a real vibe in the town that any kind of growth is bad. Doing things with the
On,
ADU.
no, on another note, okay, this, Lori Johanna,
He's just moving along
her
on
staff
topics.
put this thing out, do you support
Yeah.
the president, and yes or no? And
Do
this-
I support the
I'm
pardoning?
not
of-
asking you, I'm making this comment.
Got it. Understood.
Okay?
Got it.
This was an email that was sent to me that I'm just enlightening the audience.
And who sent that to you, John?
Steve
Trahan.
Massey
Okay.
and Lori Trahan's office put this questionnaire out, and Steve Massey wrote back, and he told her, I haven't can process the whole email, but good for you, Steve. We got to write back to our politicians. Otherwise,
absolutely.
because they don't take questions. And they answer the phone, hello, your call's very important to us.
You know,
Press 1 for dance
hate
music.
that.
So, Steve Massey, God bless you. Good. Give some pushback to Lower Ann. Thank you.
can we jump back to John's
Go right ahead.
nonprofit,
right ahead.
if you
Yeah.
don't mind? I know last time I seen you here, I told you to get in touch with like Coalition of Better Acre.
did.
You did?
Oh,
Oh,
good.
yeah,
See-
good call, yeah.
Well, the reason why I'm bringing that up is because my sister's involved in Project Compass, like I told you, and their mission is to take care of 18 to 24-year-old females with
Yeah.
children that need a place and need a start. And just always told us, stay on that track.
Yeah,
Because I'm a retired prison guard and there was nowhere for a female to go. If you accidentally kill someone in your car, you go to Framingham.
yeah.
And it's the only place for females. And it's terrible. I've been there. You know, men have several different places they can go to. And that's why I told my sister, if that's your mission, never get off that track.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you did that because I think that will help you grow.
It stabilized me a lot. I think people don't understand how traumatic it is and how much. The thing about the Afghanistan war when it ended in such a violent way and pushed itself into our lives so quickly and out of nowhere. We volunteered because most of us didn't really have a choice. And then it's just, this work has given me kind of a foundation to take that energy and put it on something positive and be able to work on myself. Vietnam veterans went through a very similar thing. They got to see, they had to see that helicopter fly off the roof in Saigon. So there's a famous picture of the Afghanistan where there's a similar thing. There's a Black Hawk or a Chinook taking people off. It was a Chinook taking people off a roof. Well, I worked at that embassy in that building, and I worked in that area. That building wasn't a helicopter building; it was an emergency flight, and people that were there knew that, right? So I just think that the work and seeing all those things, and then the moral injury, and saying I'm going to fix this with other people was probably what saved me. Because after the collapse was a really dark few months where I was trying to figure out how I was going to handle the end of my war, the people that I lost there, like all of the things that come with the effort and time you give to your country,
Yeah, the one picture that stands out for me in Afghanistan is when the C-131 was taken
Yeah.
off
Yeah.
and hundreds of people
Yeah.
were hanging on it and everything. That's how bad they want to get out of there.
Well, that's what you see also, because we
Yeah.
lived through Vietnam, is that they were doing the same thing with the helicopters that were trying to take the
Take
people
people
out
out.
of Vietnam. But Vietnam was a different situation than
Yeah.
what Afghanistan was. Vietnam was because you had the North Vietnam was invading, and we weren't keeping up with it, so we chose to withdraw. We weren't the only ones that withdrew. The French withdrew. There was a number of that
It was a
ahead
UN
of us.
effort. It wasn't just a U.S. effort. It was
Right, and
UN.
so there was a whole lot, it's similar but different. With Afghanistan, it was like one day you have people there and the next day, okay, we're out. And that's not how you're supposed to withdraw. You're supposed to withdraw on a gradual basis.
I
Not-
agree with you. Wars typically don't, though. When you typically withdraw from a war, it's always the most dangerous, chaotic, and
Correct.
fluid part of an operation, and especially when it's something like the Taliban, like running down the main highway into Kabul, right? I think people think that these things should be done in a certain way.
You can't control it.
History doesn't care what you think about how things should be
Well,
done.
no, it's going to happen regardless. But I mean, in retrospect, there are certain things that you do, and
Oh,
hopefully
yeah.
you won't
I'm
make
gonna
the same
ask-
mistake
I'm gonna
again.
ask John a question about the Afghanis.
Yeah.
Those poor souls running the side of the C-130 trying to take off.
Yeah.
Did they think America is Disney World? Did they want to go to Disney World for the rest of their life? Or they were running because the people who occupy the country are going to kill them?
I think people underestimate what fight or flight is really like. When you are that scared, you will do something crazy like hang on to a plane.
Yes.
Maybe I don't know who those people were. I don't know what their motivations were. I imagine they just didn't want to get murdered by the Taliban and were just running for their life. I think it shows the desperation. It reminds me a lot of like on 9/11, right? When people were jumping out of the windows because there was a fire to their back. I think you just get to a point where you're not making a choice. It's no longer if you don't have training and time and a lot of, just dealing with crisis, that dog part of your brain takes over and there's no more controlling
And
it.
even if you are highly trained, sometimes that
Sometimes.
overcomes the training.
Right.
Yeah.
And so for soldiers and people that deal with those things, when there's an emergency, there's a certain response that you've trained yourself to have. And most of these people, I think mostly it was sad. I think mostly I remember when the people fell off the plane, how crushed I was that they fell off the plane. And I remember just like a few hours later, there were people, organization, like, they thought it was funny. There was somebody that put out a Afghan skydiving T-shirt with a picture of the guy falling out of the plane. And
Yeah, that's not funny.
It's not funny.
No.
And it's not funny to veterans. And that's the thing I think people miss is like, I understand not everybody believes in the same kind of migration or the, integrating Afghans into the community and da-da-da. They have a really special audience, and it's soldiers and sailors and Marines that went overseas, and these people protected your family. I had an interpreter, Masood. He lives in California now. That when I went out on the road, I was in civilian clothes, and I went out into these weird buildings out in Kabul to talk to people all the time. And without Masood there, I don't understand the tone. I don't understand what he actually means. I don't understand some of the cultural things about like his head movements and stuff. And you learn them, but without Masood, you don't live. And there's people in Lowell that have had work with these same people, and Afghanistan veterans over 20-something years have built relationships with them. We know their families, and so really I've always put it as, this is how you want to support Afghanistan veterans, support us, do this. So, but it's an interesting world.
But see, that's where a lot of people will support bringing those kinds of individuals into our country because they actually have an issue, whereas an awful lot of people coming across the southern border over the last 4 years were coming for economic reasons. And they said they were when they were interviewed. So the asylum aspect of things, Afghan refugees fit that profile. I don't think that anybody disagrees with that. But the problem that we had was we collectively were just letting anybody. It's not the way it should have occurred. What you do, what you have been doing is a process that people can wrap their head around. But when you have no process, or you create the process after the chaos, to me, that is unacceptable. It doesn't work well in terms of how everybody can be assimilated into our culture, whatever that might be.
What does that mean?
Whatever that, in terms of being able to get a job.
I know, I
and-
hear this culture thing, and I don't understand what that means, because America's a mixed bag.
No, I agree with you
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
but that's the culture. The
Yeah.
culture is having things
Yeah.
mixed. Where do you fit
That's
into that part of our culture, because it's a melting pot? It isn't that it's a unique thing that's got one definition.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's many definitions, especially depending upon where you live in the country. But I'm saying that in order to fit into that, just blanketing, letting all people come in without any goal. What you're doing is different. And you're following that process. There were other people that followed that process too. It isn't that you keep people from coming here, but if you're going to have a criteria, you follow that criteria, and you just don't wave it away.
Well, I can't speak to that border. I will. Can I just say something interesting about immigration that I find? I hear this. I agree with a lot of what you're saying there, right? I don't think people should be coming in illegally, all that stuff. And it is against the law, and you do break a law. Do you know why I have such a hard time with our immigration policies? It's also illegal to hire illegal immigrants. So some of these huge
Yes.
companies down on
Thank
the
you.
border hire thousands of them,
Yep.
don't pay taxes on
Yep.
it. None of them go to jail.
Yep.
None of them get paid fines. So
No, I
if
agree
you
with you
take
there.
away the supply of work.
Absolutely.
But that's the thing, right? You want to prosecute and go after the little guys, but then you have people hiring thousands and thousands of illegal immigrants scot-free.
You've just explained why, over 40 years, the Congress can't do it, because you have those two competing interests
Yeah.
in the politics. So you've got people in Congress that want that supply of cheap labor.
Yeah. They caught a.
And then you've got the other side that so that's why they don't get together on it.
They found, I forget where it
Right.
was a chicken processing plant. They had like 12-year-old illegal immigrant children working on the line. They essentially were hiding them from regulators. And when they eventually found out and got reported from a whistleblower, like you're not allowed to take pictures in a lot of these places because they don't want it to be exposed. They found out, they send in, the federal government goes in and they pay like a slap on the wrist fine. But meanwhile, all these other people, children are getting maimed, and there has to be a balance between the people. And if you're going to enforce the law, enforce the whole gosh darn law.
Exactly.
No, and I agree with you
Exactly
there,
right.
But it doesn't happen.
No, it doesn't.
But there's
Well, wait a
also
second
that
now.
double
The
standard.
government officials don't get in trouble for anything. The government officials communicate with these illegals, they send them a postcard in English. Now, if you don't read English, you give it to somebody, what's this mean? Don't worry about it. And you just drop it out of your mind. The officials that send the communications to these illegals, they should be fired as well.
Well, I mean, if they're,
I sent them a letter.
I see that. Well, I know you.
Well, that's the same concept that FEMA has. Or you just go on the computer. There's
Go
no
on the web-
electricity. How
it's
can
on
you
the
get on the
website.
computer?
It's on the
Yeah.
website.
Well, anyway, that being stated, to continue with, where we are with regard to immigration and what you just said, maybe even, I don't think that you would recall it, and I think it was probably before you were born, we had politicians that would end up with issues when they were running because they hired a nanny
domestic
that,
workers,
that,
right.
that didn't have the right visa or didn't have the right immigration.
It was a disqualifying event for a lot of them. They were up for a job, and then they would find out that they had an undocumented person working for them, paying them under the table, not paying. The thing that got them is just like Al Capone. What finally got them? They weren't paying Social Security tax. Now you've got the attention of the government, right? Because they weren't paying their Social Security quotas.
Yeah.
And that's what tripped them up, okay? And
But it's interesting how we've waived.
but you don't hear about that
politically,
anymore. do you? Right.
all of that stuff because
Right.
it didn't support the politician and what their goals were. So you have people going, wow, we need all of these immigrants so that they can work, which is what they're doing in those companies. Oh, they're working there because other people don't want to work there. Well, it's illegal to do what they're doing.
Right,
So
exactly.
you have elected officials that are supporting illegal activity.
Yeah, but I also think
Yes.
it's supposed to, we, as a country, we need a, what is it, 40B? Not 40B, that's the zoning. There's the temporary workers, right, where you allowed them to come in during the season, I forget. what the-
H-1B.
H-1B. So I think the other thing is though these farmers really need these particular workers because they're low wage and are willing to work for out benefits, and there has to be a path for them to come in and work.
Right.
I do agree there should be a path for seasonal workers to come in. Of
course.
And it should be managed and all of those things.
Of course.
I think the thing is though people don't bother with it because they can just go out and hire somebody that's undocumented and go out there and then not pay them anything and hide them in the back
Correct.
of a barn. And again, I feel like
Supply and demand.
even if there are some people that maybe don't need to come into the United States, some of them really do. Asylum is actually really difficult to get. And to get asylum, you go through a really incredibly personal, difficult process of talking about your experience, showing photos. And a lot of people don't get asylum. They don't actually get approved. So
Yeah, it's
asylum's actually different, and I think that's really the part of the problem is that there is if you're either going to you're either going to take people at face value and go through the process, which is essentially coming into the country and asking for asylum, which is the process, but we're doing a return to Mexico now, so we're breaking the law by sending them back, but here we are.
Okay, great show today. Did
We
we
did.
see any homemade goodies yet? Yes, we did. I already enjoyed it.
It
Thank
looked
you,
great,
everyone.
too.
How was it?
Tomorrow's show, we're going to have Cliff Grieger's going to be the host. Eileen Del Rossi's going to be here, and the little son, Melanie Gilbert, she's going to be here too. Time is short.
John, if you could throw up John's fundraiser again, that'd be great.
Thank
Got
you.
about 5 minutes.
We didn't do announcements.
Isn't that wonderful?
That's okay. I'm going in a,
Well, we'll
I'm
do
going
it
in a
twice
polo.
next week, Evelyn.
So anybody that, when he pulls this up, if you scan it, if you want to RSVP and come by and see it, there's actually going to be another Afghanistan vet. There's going to be a bunch of Afghanistan veterans there. There'll be Afghans there. There'll be town people there. It's open to anybody. The art's beautiful. The people are nice. The music's going to be really good. And we just wanted to, and we did it. We're choosing historic locations within the town.
CCA?
Yeah, the CCA I think is a good location. We'll probably do the UU Church for some more events down there. But it's going to be a beautiful event, and it's really going to fit well within the community, I think, for sure. I'm really excited about it.
Well, it sounds like you've got a pretty good response so far.
Yeah,
And you will get walk-ins.
Yeah. And so there's actually a Bob Dylan concert in the building on the third floor.
Oh, well,
at the
there you
same
go.
time.
Yeah,
So I
okay.
was like, we're just going to put a little arrow so when people get out of the show, they can come by and
This
say hello.
Saturday, I'm going into the Atlantic Ocean on a polar plunge.
Oh, yeah, you can go by
Saturday.
yourself,
Really?
sir.
Yeah, John's been throwing.
How's your heart? Is your heart in good
Yeah,
shape?
I'm bringing my 18-year-old grandson to
donate?
pull me out, believe
Okay.
me.
Is this for charity?
It's to help out two people, yeah.
I'm gonna let me know about it after. I got you.
John usually throws that up on there, but we missed him today, but
I
that's
get
okay.
cold just
He'll
looking
do
at the
it
water,
tomorrow.
never mind jumping into it.
Yeah, I would pay you to jump in the water so I don't have to.
You
Exactly.
don't have to jump in the water, it's a good group right here, this thing here,
Keith
yeah.
Family Polar Plunge.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
They've been very successful.
So they've done this before.
Yeah, they help different people, like you can have some people who had brain
17th
cancer.
annual.
The
That's
last person.
Saturday.
Yeah, this Saturday,
But
yeah.
then John's event, this is his.
There you go.
And that's on the 31st. So, yeah, anybody's welcome. And definitely donate to Bob's thing as well.
Who designed the flyer? That's very attractive.
I have a designer friend. We have a bunch
Yeah.
of people that are kind of new in the industry, so we call it low bono, where we're like, do work for each other. Low bono, where we all kind of
Oh,
like,
that's good.
yeah, it's fun. It's a lot
Are
of
you
fun.
working toward having your own building someday?
Someday, it's in the 5-year plan.
Okay.
We're in year 1, which is kind of structural, like, we got to do a lot of like boring business stuff to get it all
So I'll
working.
give you a minute and a half. You're running for school committee. You'll be
Yes.
on again.
Yes.
Yes.
We'll have you on
Any
again.
opposition so far?
No opposition so far, but yes, I am running for my 4th term of the Chelmsford School Committee. I think it's going to be a great year. I hope that people in Chelmsford will vote for me. I've been pretty stable in the town. I've been a good advocate, I believe, for families and taxpayers, and I continue to work really hard on things like the contracts and making sure that our core function of making sure the superintendent's doing what he needs to do, making sure our policies are up to date, all of that work and communicating with the community is it's some of the best work I've ever done, and I hope that will convince some people to vote for me.
And that's one of 2 seats that are up, right?
One of 2 seats. And Maria Santos is also pulled, and I hope people will vote for her. She's an incredibly professional, not just a lawyer, but an incredible person that understands the challenges of immigrants, but also understands how that applies in schools. And she's been a real big proponent for education in Chelmsford for longer than she's been on a school committee. She's wonderful, and I hope you'll vote for her as well.
Yeah, I miss her.
Well said.
We've had her a few times. It's
Well, I
awesome.
did text her, but we'll text her again because she's a busy person.
She's a very busy person right now.
Right.
Do you like Jay Lang?
I love Dr. Lang. Dr. Lang is stable. He's honest.
Evelyn, read this one, will you?
As of January 2025, the average salary for a school board member in the United States
That's just crazy.
Oh, come
was
on.
That can't
$96,525
be
a
right.
year.
That can't be right.
That's crazy.
That's
So
not-
it would be nice to know
No.
where,
Yeah, where is
Where
that?
is it?
3 hours a month.
That's not right.
let me move there.
In Lowell, you get 12,000.
Well, I think you have to understand what they mean by board salary, okay? And what's a board? I mean,
That's probably in Chicago.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
I can't read that.
Well, Evelyn, I'll quote it to you, okay?
No, it's
in
okay,
Los
'cause we're-
Angeles, where they like to burn down the school districts,
Yeah, Los Angeles,
125
Chicago,
grand.
Miami.
Miami-Dade week and bask in the sun, 42 grand. Clark, wherever they, I don't know what Clark.
Nevada.
Broward County Public
that's
Schools,
Florida.
42 grand.
but they're
It
political.
was like a mix of red and blue states, though.
but-
Okay, cheapskates, just something to consider. Back
Yeah,
to you guys.
well,
Crazy.
I think
Can
you're
you imagine
comparing
sticking
apples
that
to-
in a budget?
You're comparing,
right.
oh, yeah, no,
Yep,
that would not
so we're going to
fly.
run out of time. We want everybody to
Only
make sure
rich
that,
people can serve in Chelmsford.
well, or at least, or if you have a spouse that works and the other person doesn't.
Rich.
I
Well, I don't consider it
came out
rich.
of a condo into a $300,000
We're,
house in
we're going to be off shortly. So thank you very much. And we appreciate you coming. We're going to see you again. And everybody stay warm. Be careful about all the ice out there. And we hope, we'll hopefully see everybody
Yep, good luck with your
next
fundraiser.
Thursday.
Good
Say
luck.
goodbye, Evelyn.
Yeah.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you, guys.
That'll,